artificial intelligence will completely transform our world. But what is AI? Why will it affect you? And how can you and your business survive and thrive through the AI revolution? Welcome to AI and You. Here is your host, author, speaker, and futurist, Peter Scott.
Hello, this is episode 255. My guest today is Diane Gutiw, Vice President and leader of the AI Research Center at the global business consultancy CGI. She holds a PhD in medical information technology management and has led collaborative strategy design and implementation planning for advanced analytics and AI for large organizations in the energy and utilities, railway, and government healthcare sectors. We're going to talk about how enterprises manage the integration of AI at the dizzying speeds of change today, where AI does and does not impact employment, how the HR department should change in those enterprises, how to deal with hallucinations, and how to manage the risks of deploying generative AI in customer solutions. So let's get into the interview. Diane Gutiw, it's a pleasure to welcome you to Artificial Intelligence and You. You have quite the background here in a whole variety of things that largely spell governance of AI that we want to get into. And you have, in particular, an interesting chapter in a book that gets into this topic, wherein you say artificial intelligence is not just another tool in the toolbox. It is a lever that has the power to redefine how opportunities are achieved and how the risk of failure or errors are mitigated. And I'd like to get into that. It's the responsible use of artificial intelligence, because it's aimed particularly at people who are, well, I'll let you craft that description there. Or why don't you tell us who that chapter is for? And then we'll dig into some of the things that you say in that.
Sure. So I believe the chapter that you're referring to is part of a textbook on AI ethics. With the rise of generative AI and the popularity and accessibility of AI, the importance of expanding, extending AI literacy across the population, really, because everybody now has access to different AI tools with natural language on their phones and on their computers. In a business context, we have more and more AI, even since that chapter was written, integrated into our work productivity tools, everything from our word processing and spreadsheets through to some of the more advanced tools. So it's really important to make sure that people understand how these work, understand all of the things that we've been doing with traditional AI over the years to make sure that we're using it responsibly and that we're applying, for all intents and purposes, research best practices to anything that we're using data to help make a decision, to answer questions. So principles such as transparency, explainability, correctness and reliability, privacy, security, all of these things apply when you're doing research with data. And that's what we're bringing forward when we use these tools, making sure that people understand all of those principles when they're getting information to help them make a decision, so that they're both discerning about the type of information as well as using it and protecting information that may be sensitive.
Thank you. And the full title of that chapter, to clarify, is Responsible Use of Artificial Intelligence, Perspective of a Global IT Management Consultancy. And listening to you talk about that, it just strikes me as how remarkable it is that we have gone, for many people, in less than 3 years from what does AI stand for to best practices for using this in your business. I mean, I can't think of anything that has evolved that fast in terms of the adoption and acculturation of a new technology, not the internet, not the web. And surely this tests the capacity of any organization to adapt. What special challenges are there in trying to, as it were, change out the engine while the plane is flying?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And one over this last few weeks, particularly, we seem to be having more and more as organizations are moving from experimenting and pilots into practical application and rolling out some of these productivity tools across their organizations. In looking at it, what people really need to be clear on is that this is not a tool that's going to replace anybody. This is a tool that's designed to assist us and be able to make some of the things that were complex, time consuming, expensive, to make those things much easier, much more accessible. And that's really, I think, what's driving this. AI has been around since the 50s. The initial neural networks were designed in the 50s. Expert systems were and decision support systems, predictive maintenance all took off more into the 80s. And then with cloud technology, even preceding generative AI, the use of advanced analytics and AI for different business problems to be able to address, again, predictive maintenance is a good example, decision support in healthcare is a good example where we were using traditional AI. So this shift is the accessibility. It's the rollout to a much larger group of people. And what has driven that is there are some great capabilities. So the ability to look at documents, the ability to generate new information from past, as well as images and different types of media. But the real difference is being able to have a conversation with that data in natural language, either by voice or by text. That's what has driven this forward. In the past, AI was conducted by data scientists, and it was highly technical mathematical algorithms that you needed somebody to explain, and then you needed a business person to validate. Well, now you can have a conversation with your information with natural language, and that's accessible on phones. There's lots of free tools out there. And as I say, more and more, it's getting integrated into all the tools that we already were using every day. So with that, making sure that we do have AI literacy, that people understand the best practices to using it, as well as how to make it more trustworthy and how to protect information, both personal or sensitive information of organizations when you're giving information to it, as well as discerning what's coming back from it and protecting from reusing copyright information such as images. So all of that is part of why we have to put this layer of responsible use in place.
Well said. I'll return to the responsible use in a minute, but I want to pick up on something that's a bit of a trigger in what you said there at the beginning, which is that it's not going to replace anyone. And I think that we need to parse that out and distinguish between what's an observation and what's an imperative or an ambition. Because a couple of episodes ago, I was going through some anecdotes. One of them was that Wendy's has shaved 22 seconds off the average time to place an order by using AI order takers. In environments like that, there's no way that doesn't have a bottom line impact on the number of people employed. In an even earlier episode, we deconstructed some of the false narrative around what happened with bank tellers when ATMs came about. So there are certainly places where the ambition is to replace people with AI. Even as much as I, in my special applications of AI, tell teachers that they're not going to be replaced, I then have to say that, well, there is this one school where they quite proudly announced that they were using AI to replace teachers, and I was very angry about that. So can you speak to what environments the observation of AI not replacing anyone does and will remain accurate for?
Yeah, so let me give some context. We're about to hit an incredible resource capacity crunch across all sectors, and we're already hitting it in the healthcare space. We're hitting it in a lot of areas where baby boomers and that even the tail end of the baby boomer generation are retiring. So we will be hitting a massive resource crunch, and we now have a technology that's allowing us to rethink how we work. So it may replace activities in the workplace, but I don't think that we're going to ever be in a situation where there's not enough work because AI has taken over all the work. The other thought on this is that automation and AI are two different things. And there's a lot of automation that has already taken over tasks that were formerly performed by people. Everything from automated grocery checking, there's not a lot of AI in that. It really is just a technology that's making things easier for people to be able to do what it is they need. When we're looking at how AI is going to work in the future, I think it's really important that we don't think of AI as a band-aid. You can't take AI and put it on top of existing work processes and think that you're going to do the same thing. When you're integrating technologies and all innovation, not just AI, into a workflow, you need to look at where it best fits and where the human best fits. Because AI is really good at answering questions, but you still need that human to ask the question, to design the process. So some of those menial things, some of those very repetitive things, looking for information, finding, pulling it together, that you don't necessarily need a lot of creativity, is the best place for AI, as well as doing some things that are hard to do as a human. Diagnostic imaging is a great example because AI is brilliant at seeing things that are very hard to see with the human eye. In those cases, it's important not to take the human out of the loop. Diagnostic imaging, it's a great tool to assist a radiologist. And I just came from some great meetings with radiologists in the UK. It's a great tool for assisting, but it can't replace all of that knowledge that we pull together and being able to understand different variances because it's quite black and white.
Indeed. And we had a radiologist on the show back in episodes 171, 172, Matthew Lundgren, helping us understand just how nuanced this place of AI in the radiology workflow was. So a lot to pause there, particularly this idea of a resource crunch and the fact that the places where humans are going to be doing the most work will change, probably more rapidly than it has ever changed before. And some of the valid questions that people might have will be, can I keep up? If I'm mid-career, am I going to be able to adapt to this? I very much like what you said about asking questions, because as AI gets better at providing answers, then our role becomes to ask the right questions. And a lot of the evolution with AI has been unpredictable or unpredicted. 10 years ago, we might have said, I was saying, that AI will free us up to do more art and humanities and psychology and human work. And now AI is doing art and poetry and creative writing and psychotherapy. There's nuance to that, but it's doing it way better than anyone expected at that time. So it's made uneven inroads, one would say, into the areas where we were predicting it to be useful. How does an organization that has to manage a large employee base and do the human resources for those, we're talking about all the functions of retention, reskilling, and hiring, try to hit such a moving target?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I was just at Hanover Messe, and the theme there was that we, and I mean you and I and others that are listening, are the last generation that are going to be managing a workforce of purely human resources, because human AI integration and collaboration is really where we're going. And it's taken off, as you say, much faster than any of us predicted. So when you're managing your resource, it's a combination of upskilling people that are already in roles that will be continuing, as well as using these technologies to help that increase in skill. A great example of that would be a contact center. So if I added in the past a new person onto a contact center, they needed a fair bit of time to become familiar with all the technologies, let's say they're supporting, with past incidents and error messages. They go through training and with a keyword search, try to find the best answer to a question. With the newer technology, we're able to take that knowledge base from all of the training guides, all of the application manuals, as well as all the past incidents, and provide that natural language inquisition of that information to get a quick answer to a question. The same with new developers. As they're coming in, they now have a tool that's helping them understand, how do I find this? Or why am I getting this error? So the skills, people coming in are being able to learn very quickly and come up to speed much quicker than we did in the past. In the developer acceleration area, we're doing a lot of productivity studies at CGI to understand really where is the benefit from using these tools and at which role is the benefit and getting the most benefit, because these are expensive and rolling these tools out for large organizations very quickly is quite costly. What we're seeing is that it's the juniors and the intermediates that are using the tools the most for exactly that purpose. Why am I getting this error where we may have struggled with something and trying to fix it? There's quicker answers to questions, as well as finding different things or finding better ways to make data integration quicker and more effective and more efficient. The seniors love the tool because the juniors aren't coming to them with those questions anymore, and they're using it for something much more complex. So your question, how are we managing this as large organizations of workforce that are coming up to speed? The next generation, the folks in university, are already being taught and trained on how to be discerning, how to use these things thoughtfully. I'm seeing that happen in academics. It went from being afraid of it and you're going to end up cheating because you have these tools, to teaching kids and teaching university students on how to leverage this for research as an assistance. So we're going to have the next generation coming into our workforce much more savvy at these tools. The fact that it's a natural language front end is really making a difference as well. You're not having to be a mathematical genius on how to run an algorithm or write an algorithm. You can really use it quite easily for all different purposes across all different roles. For the existing workforce, it's happening as we speak in these tools being integrated into what we're working with, whether it's software development or word processing or Excel spreadsheets or developing PowerPoints. It's already there. And making sure that people understand when the best place to use this is has been really key. There's some really good training out there on that. But again, it's that natural language front end is making it quite easy. It's not hard for people to use, and everybody's finding a different place. What I find monotonous and challenging and something I'd like to use it for might be very different from you. I personally like to write, so I don't want this to replace how I write, but finding information, finding research, validating that research is something that I've really enjoyed using the tool for, because it's saving me time searching through all of the available past research to find what it is I'm looking for. So it's happening naturally. I think the next generation is really going to speed this up, and then using these tools to upskill people. It really is something we're seeing happen quite quickly and naturally.
What sort of teething troubles have there been in development organizations like CGI in getting used to and dealing with the phenomenon of hallucination? Now, that's when AI produces an answer that it is quite confident in and sounds correct, but isn't. And certainly that could be viewed as simple quality control, because humans make mistakes too. So if AI makes mistakes, that's not necessarily a big deal, as long as it makes fewer mistakes than whatever human you might have been using for that job before, that it's now doing faster. But hallucination is a difficult thing to quantify. How has it shown up? How do you approach it?
Yeah, another good question. You know what? You have to be discerning. We have to be discerning the same way you would if you're doing a Google search for the best Italian restaurant in Victoria. You're not likely going to pick the top one in the list. You're discerning. You go in, you look, you understand what's on the menu, who's gone there, what the reviews are. We need to have that same level of discernment with generative AI. So if I ask that question, I need to still explore, is this the best answer to the question? Is this accurate? Did this information put the facts together? Because that's where I found the most challenges, is not in gathering, retrieving information. It's connecting the dots. It might have 3 facts that are all correct, but it puts them together incorrectly. So challenging the responses and being discerning is really important. And that's something that we're training people in. Another thing that has really improved hallucination and the quality and reliability of the outputs of these tools is agentic AI. And we're beginning to build that into solutions both internally as well as for our clients, where you'll have a second agent doing that fact checking. I had a client say, it's great that we've got transparency and we're showing the references and citations for the answers, but if I have to go check every single time, is that answer correct? It's really not that helpful. which prompted the need for that second agent to do the fact checking, to give a quality score, to validate the answer for us. And we're going to see more and more of that right across the whole realm of responsible AI. All of those things that we need to do to validate those principles, privacy, security, reliability, robustness, having other agents to do that checking for you and improve the quality of the responses you're getting is another way. So when we're using these tools focused on a business problem, we're pointing that information rather than using the wide internet to get an answer to a question to just our own information. And then we lock it down in a way and set parameters so the responses are not trying to guess at an answer, that it's giving a clear answer and is asking qualifying questions if needed. So those are some things we do. And then adding that other agent to fact check to make sure it used the source of truth and that it put that information together correctly. So it's emerging, it's evolving. I wouldn't say we're 100% there. So AI literacy and creating a workforce of discerning humans and working with these tools is also really critical.
Looking forward to getting into some of the implementation ideas like that in a little bit. But I want to stay on the topic of enterprise governance for a while because it's so important. And one of the things that I've realized is that I've seen organizations make appalling decisions about their AI strategy, and that really AI is like a mirror, that it can be reflective of an organization's culture and values. And sometimes it's a spotlight as well. So to the extent that that appears true, what would be caveats, warnings, go through this checklist before you go all out on AI for an organization so that it doesn't trip itself up by its own dysfunctions?
Yeah, it's such a challenging area, AI governance, because it's not a static industry and the capabilities aren't static. CGI, we have our global AI governance. It's a combination, and this would be my first advice, is it's not just one role. We need security, privacy, legal, procurement, as well as technical subject matter experts that are able to give insights into what the best practice is for your organization. You also need to look at jurisdictional compliance because the EU and Canada, for example, data residency is really important. If you're using a technology that doesn't have a data store and ensure that data in flight is staying within that jurisdiction, you also have a compliance issue. So there's compliance, there's tools that meet the needs of the users, and then how do you manage this when you may do your security, privacy, legal review against one tool, and the next release suddenly opens up a capability that wasn't included in that last review. It's just, if you don't find a way to manage these things and manage and future-proof your policies, it becomes really challenging. The other area we're starting to see as well is we can look at these individual models and tools and assess them for safe reuse and compliance and meeting jurisdictional needs as well as your organizational needs. But then you have to look at all of the tools that are being integrated into things we already have, everything from our user experience design tools and modeling tools into the tools like Salesforce, which are really investing in a lot of their technology, as well as all the Microsoft products and the Google products. How do we then manage when somebody already has a tool and suddenly AI is released into it as well? Our approach has been to provide guardrails rather than definitive, thou shalt not do this, with the exception of some things that really are outside of what we're comfortable doing. We do have our list of thou shalt nots, but set guardrails that encourage innovation safely with tools that are applicable and relevant to what that person is doing, and to be able to extend that to either for a solution for a client as well as for use internally, but do it in a way that we're making sure that we're risk adverse and we're mitigating risk from protecting people's information, protecting copyright, making sure that any model is fine-tuned and trained on the right information. All of those things we're training our staff on to make sure that we're mitigating the risk, but promoting innovation. The other thing that we've done and we advise organizations is don't just rely on security, privacy, legal, but also make sure you have terms of use. Make sure that anyone who has said, I'm going to be using this tool understands what those guardrails are for personal use. Whether your organization has a secure environment and is it comfortable sharing proprietary information or not, the users need to be aware because the next model may not be as safe as the last, or the next version of the model may not be as safe as the last one. So if the user agrees, I'm going to use it in this context for this relevant use, and then you're doing your due diligence on the capabilities of the tool and then trying to future-proof is really critical. It's a moving target, but I think it's the collaboration across all of the compliance and regulation is really important. Validating new tools as they come in. Are they safe for use and relevant? And then, of course, looking at the cost. Not the same tool is going to be the best tool for every function. And there are some tools that may be safe to use at a lower cost that might be valuable versus tools that are higher cost but providing higher value. So looking at what it is you're doing, looking at what the needs are, what your expectations are, identifying what the benefit is, and setting those KPIs in the beginning. For example, go back to contact center. If I decide I'm going to roll out an AI tool to support the contact center, in the beginning, I need to be able to say, I want to be able to close tickets X%, 10%, 15%, 20% quicker by doing this, and then validate, did I get the value from this tool or not? Are all things that we're advising as part of AI governance. So it's a big area. It's a big topic, but future-proofing, focusing on innovation, but setting some very clear guidelines organizationally on what you're comfortable with.
How does a business feel comfortable about delivering solutions to customers that embed AI that they cannot know completely? This will be the third time that I've bagged on Air Canada as an example, but it's deserved. And that was the case where they deployed a chatbot on their site that then made a promise to a customer that was not met by the rest of their site. And they tried to disavow it and said, it's a chatbot, nothing to do with us. They lost that case, as they should have. And that was something that might send chills down the spine of many a customer relations executive who wants to know, well, how do we make sure that doesn't happen to us? And because you can't guarantee that a large language model isn't going to go off the rails somewhere, that's their nature. You can minimize that risk, but then you're not going to get something like the mathematical proof of a certificate of bridgeworthiness. It's not possible. How do you feel comfortable delivering solutions that embed generative AI?
Yeah, it goes back to we have a risk framework that follows the development of a solution that either is building an AI solution or integrating an AI solution. So at each step, we're identifying what the risk may be and mitigating that as much as possible, all the way from when the problem is initially designed. So what is this trying to do, through to operations and ongoing. And that's our approach to making sure that we're looking for gaps in a solution, identifying where there may be a risk, where it may give information to the audience that is not intended, and then how do we minimize that risk and mitigate it throughout. So just to walk you through, first of all, don't design AI just because. Have a very specific purpose for that AI. Have it solving a problem or answering a question that's very specific. The next would be focus that AI on just the information that is relevant. So in the case you're talking about, we would focus it only being allowed to answer from relevant information, policies, or guidance from that organization, not to stray outside of it. So if it couldn't find the answer to the question being asked, don't answer the question. The next would be validating that the model is appropriate. Is this a Gen AI thing? Is it safe to use Gen AI? Are there other more traditional AIs that may give a better question or a better approach? A good example would be traditional chatbots that are mapping questions to very specific answers rather than going off and trying to generate something new. There's certainly cases where those are still very relevant because you want to give very precise answers. The next would be make sure you're validating and testing the quality, and there are statistical ways to validate the quality of AI solutions, things like confusion matrix and precision recall, where you can quantify the reliability. And then last, as you roll into operations, make sure you're continuously monitoring. Make sure that you have a dashboard behind it that's validating the types of questions, the types of answers, the amount of use of the tool. Is it still relevant? And what is the quality ongoing? It's not just a test it once. You need to validate that ongoing. And by putting that framework in place, that's where we talk about that's our risk level. And that's what we advise our clients on, really mitigate the risk. If I have a solution that's a very low risk solution, it's not going to cause anyone any harm. It may give an incorrect answer, but that incorrect answer may be an annoyance. That would be the most of the problem versus advising someone to do something that's going to cause reputational, health, or financial harm. The level of mitigation and controls we put over it changes. So, for example, going back to radiology, we have a fantastic solution called Head AI that was developed with Helsinki University Hospital that's looking at early brain bleeds. That is an advice to the clinician. It's validated continuously, and the metrics for how high quality of a result it's giving is measured continuously. And right now we're at 99%. I know the client is pushing to go even higher at detecting these brain bleeds. We don't just test it once, we test ongoing to make sure that we're getting that reliable result and the intended benefit of the solution.
That's the end of the first half of the interview. Next half is next week. In today's news, ripped from the headlines about AI, Shopify CEO Tobi Lütke declared strong new guidelines for hiring at the e-commerce giant prove that AI cannot do the work before requesting more headcount. In a recent internal memo shared publicly on X, Lütke told employees that teams must explore AI solutions first before seeking additional resources. The memo describes, quote, reflexive AI usage as a baseline expectation across Shopify, emphasizing that AI is now core to how the company operates. Lütke encouraged teams to think about their work as if AI agents were already part of the team and to redesign workflows accordingly. Think about what that represents. We've gone, or at least Shopify for one, has gone from what is this AI thing to use AI unless you can prove you need a human within a few years. Anyone out there with a crystal ball who can tell me whether this is an outlier or an early sign of a coming wave, please let me know what you see. Next week, we'll conclude the interview with Diane Gutiw, when we'll talk about synthetic data, digital triplets, agentic AI, and continuous autonomous improvement and best practices for compliance. That's next week on AI and You. Until then, remember, no matter how much computers learn how to do, it's how we come together as humans that matters.
That's all for this episode of AI and You. Please leave a rating and comment and share with your friends. Get the book Artificial Intelligence and You and see more videos and articles at aiandyou.net. That's aiandyou.net, where you can also send us your questions. Thank you for listening.